Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Viswamitra is an important person, so important we have 3 parts for him. Same number of parts as for Hanuman. Although Hanuman, you can't beat Hanuman. The benefits of hearing Ramayana. If you recall, one of the PDF documents that was sent to you was Phala Stuti, and in Krishna Dharma's Ramayana, he has a little appendix. Audio's not going? Okay. The gods, Gandharvas, Siddhas, and Rishis always listen with great pleasure to the Ramayana in heaven. This legend is the bestower of longevity, the enhancer of fortune, and the dispeller of sins. It is the equal of the Vedas. A man reading even a quarter of it is freed from all sins. Indeed, even if one sins daily, he is released from the reactions if he recites just one verse of the Ramayana. A man gets the results of 1,000 Ashwamedha sacrifices and 10,000 Vajpaya sacrifices merely by hearing this great work. He has visited all the holy shrines and bathed in all the sacred rivers. One who listens to the story of Sri Ram with full reverence roots out all sins and goes to the world of Vishnu. The Ramayana is the unsurpassed form of Gayatri. And that's written directly in Uttarakhanda. There's more coming, but a little sidebar is Govindaraj is one of the commentators that we mentioned. Again, that's another one of the PDFs that you received. The time of his life is uncertain. So rather than some people say this and some people say that, that when he lived is uncertain, but where he lived is certain. He lived in Tirupati. He received direct instruction in his dream from the Lord of Tirupati to write a commentary. And we saw in the earlier stages, the commentary he calls ornaments, bhushana. And each of the 7 khandas is an ornament of the form of the Lord from his feet up to his crown, the jewel on his crown. And so he has given commentary from the previous commentators in the Sri Sampradaya that indeed Ramayana is a commentary on Gayatri, which is stated in this Uttarakhanda's statement, but the commentators have expanded, and how that is so is in their commentaries. And the simple of it is different words or phrases in Brahma Gayatri is illuminated in the different khandas. And then, of course, the details of how it is illuminated in the different khandas is extensive commentary on this. Those of you that are fascinated with Ramayana, you may be interested to know. This is an advertisement now. There's a devotee, Vidvan Gauranga Das, who has dedicated himself for the next number of years to make a comprehensive translation of Valmiki Ramayana. Of course, there's multiple versions of Valmiki Ramayana, and Govindaraja's commentaries, which are exhaustive, and publish it. It's available through Amazon.com. The first 3 khandas have been completed. And just to give you an idea, the first Khanda is, Bala Khanda is 3 volumes, Ayodhya Khanda is 4 volumes, and each of those volumes is thick, like the size of our Brihat Bhagavatamrita publication. Very extensive. Govindaraj, amongst the commentators, is the most revered. Something like Krishnadas Kaviraj amongst the commentators of the life and teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Krishnadas Kaviraj is the most revered. So that's now available in readable English. It's lots and lots and lots of detail. For those of you that don't like detail, you won't be interested in this. But it gives his explanations of things. So I just paused on this statement from Uttarakhanda that says Ramayana is a commentary on Gayatri. It explains Gayatri. The Ramayana is the unsurpassed form of Gayatri. By hearing it with devotion, one will undoubtedly achieve liberation, along with many generations of ancestors. The exploits of Sri Ram are the bestower of all 4 of life's objects, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Hearing even one line of this work with full devotion guarantees one's attainment in the world of Brahma, world of Lord Rama. So, I've gotten some feedback from some devotees that are unfamiliar with Ramayana, and for those who are unfamiliar with Ramayana, it's a little keep up with the names and the storyline. It's like they're struggling with it. So for the benefit of those that are struggling with it, the one of the main purposes of the Itihasa and Purana, both of those are called Smriti. They're to illuminate the Shruti. And Shruti is teachings, and the Puranas and Itihasas are teachings in real life. They're real histories with real people, and it's illustrating teachings. They are illustrating teachings. So say it the other way. Lord Ramachandra is an incarnation of the personality of Godhead. This is the story of his life as he displays his life in this world. And remind you of this Padma Purana reference. I extracted the exact reference. 1 billion. One translation says 100. Another is actually Chatakoti. It's 1 billion times the Supreme Lord. There's versions of Ramayana according to Padma Purana, and there's subsequent to Padma Purana further versions. 1 billion versions, and the differences are due to different days of Brahma, because Ram appears once, as Krishna appears once in each day of Brahma. So he's exhibiting pastimes to attract the hearts and the minds of persons in this world to the spiritual realm. Now, we're in ISKCON, we're more accustomed to hearing of the personalities in Krishna's pastimes. And for some people, that's a little bit like reading chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita. Like, let me skip over chapter 1 and go to chapter 2 because that's where the teachings are. Some people have that disposition. And that's fine because those personalities in chapter 1 are not like the personalities here. But this is Viswamitra, for example. And next is going to be as Viswamitra is bringing Ram. There's Viswamitra on the right. There's Ram and Lakshman going to the ashram of Gautama. And so it may be difficult for somebody to, like, who's Gautama? And there's so many rishis in this Ramayana, and my head is spinning, and there's Ahalya, and who's Ahalya? And God. If one can't, for those that struggle a little bit with the names, there are certainly those that don't because they grew up with this. But if you're one of the persons struggling with the names, try to capture the spirit, because here we have Viswamitra pictured on the right, and he's doing a service for a great personality. The great personality is Ahalya, and she made a grievous mistake for which she had to endure some difficulty. But Lord Ramachandra was ready and had the potency at all these points of items of surrender to deliver her, which was spoken to her by Gautama. So try to understand, those of you that struggle, try to picture the essence, and as you hear the story again and again, and hear it again and again, and hear it again and again, just like hearing Bhagavatam again and again, the different names and the personalities, the puzzle pieces start to become more clear, and the essence emerges. Some people just want the essence, okay? But we're going to go into what the Itihasa does, Ramayana does. It illuminates teachings through history. And in the process, you can celebrate. Viswamitra is going to become perfected Vaishnav. And that's not where he started. He started in a very different place. So we heard in the first two parts that he's now in direct contact with the personality of Godhead. In his youth, Ram is 12, Lakshman is 12. They're just young men, young boys, young men, not even teenagers, and the exhibiting powers of Godhead. Viswamitra is coming to understand the extent of power, and part of that is delivering Ahalya. Here's a photograph, recent photograph, of the place where Lord Ramachandra relieved Ahalya from the curse of Gautama. And here's a little history behind Indra's fascination with Ahalya. You see in the painting, Indra made himself look exactly like Gautama. So the history is, we mentioned it already, how it was that Indra was defeated by Indrajit. But I'll remind you for those that may forget or don't know. In the early stage of creation, Brahma wanted to create praja, or offspring, or populate good praja. So he decided, and thus he did, just as he had mind-born sons, he also manifested Ahalya. She was perfect in beauty and unblemished, and that's what Ahalya means, Ahalya, without any blemish, with a perfect lady. And he hadn't yet decided who she should be married with. So for protection purposes, he resided under the care of Gautama, one of Brahma's direct sons, Gautama. So after some time, Indra was thinking, surely Brahma is going to arrange for Ahalya to marry me. However, Brahma didn't do that. Brahma saw how qualified Gautama was, how happy Ahalya was, and Ahalya was then given in marriage to Gautama. And Indra, being lusty, he had a fascination for this lady who he thought was going to become one of his queens. So shortly after their marriage, he disguised himself as Gautama. When Gautama went to perform his midday duties, who would show up but Indra, looking exactly like Gautama. And Ahalya detected, but at the same time she was flattered by his attraction for her, and they had union together. And after that happened, Ahalya said to Indra, please protect both of us from the wrath of Gautama. And Indra said, no worries, I'll leave immediately. And as he was leaving immediately, who should he bump into on the path but Gautama Rishi? That's where this painting is. Gautama immediately detected not only this is an imitation, but what his mentality was. And so he cursed both Indra and Ahalya. And the curse for Indra was pretty serious. Oh, lusty fool, may your testicles immediately fall off. So castrated Indra went back to the heavenly realm, and he approached the Devas. His concern, Indra's concern, at least externally, his concern was Gautama may be doing all of his austerities so he can take over my position. So I managed to stop him, but I need some help from the rest of the Devas. Can you make an arrangement so I can reproduce? So, according to Ramayana, the Pitris castrated a ram and grafted his testicles to his body. Little surgery. And Indra's, back in action. And Ahalya, he said, you knowingly did what you did. And this is very sinful, abominable. And so you should become a stone for the duration of time until Lord Ramachandra comes, places his foot on your stone body, and then through that austerity that you've undergone and the touch of Ram's foot, you'll become free from this curse. And we can be together again. I will give you, purify your home. We already heard a few times, Shatananda, for those that have trouble with names of people, I'm saying it 3 times. Shatananda was Gautama and Ahalya's son. Shatananda knew of this curse. His father disappeared from the ashram. Ahalya is now a stone. Shatananda had some relationship with Viswamitra. He requested, please bring Ram to this ashram, have him place his foot on that stone so my mother can be relieved of the curse of my father and they can be together again. So that's the pastime. And Vishwamitra, pictured here, brings Ram, who places his foot on the stone, and she becomes Ahalya again. And there's many such paintings because this is celebrated Leela, the power of the touch of Ram's foot. and as well the power of Gautama Rishi. So there's a serpent by their feet, a cobra, deer in the background, and there's Viswamitra and Lakshman in the background. And Ram is relieving Ahalya, who offers beautiful prayers. And they're on their way to Mithila. Here's the last slide on this. Ram and Lakshman liberate Ahalya from her curse. He pays homage to them and accompanies her husband once more. So that's in the bottom right. He's with Gautama again. And the upper right, that's Gautama coming, knowing that the curse has been relieved. And up above, that's the demigod showering flowers on Lord Ramachandra. So they enter Mithila. And you see in the upper right, that's a yagya hala, that's a sacrificial arena, where the king, Janak, and Shatananda next to him. Shatananda is wearing that looks like a purple dhoti, and the king is wearing a king's attire. And now they're meeting. So they heard that they're on their way. They came out of the city to meet Vishwamitra, Ram, and Lakshman. That's in the lower left. Here's a photograph of the palace in the place. It's not the same palace, obviously, but where King Janak ruled. And in that exchange, there's the traditional kinds of exchange. Shatananda describes details over on the bottom right. Shatananda is describing details of the history of Vishwamitra. On the lower left, there's this reception, and then there's Lakshman and Vishwamitra. So there's a very nice exchange. And the citizens were amazed just at seeing Ram, because his beauty and his features and his everything were all attractive. And so they start wondering, by whose austerity have we gotten the opportunity to see Lord Ram? And what we've been narrating so far is the section of Ramayana where Shatananda narrates the story of Vishwamitra, going way back to his being the son of Gadi and so forth. And next, Janak narrates the history of the bow. And here's a nice painting. Well, in short, we'll hear the detail of the history. But this bow is the bow of Lord Shiva. And the bow of Lord Shiva was given to Shiva by Vishvakarma in order to defeat a demon. The demon's name is escaping me. Come up. And after he defeated the demon, he gave the bow to the Devatas, the demigods. And then the demigods, after some time, gave to a king in the line of the Ikshvaku dynasty. In the line of Janak. And one of the predecessor kings in Janak's line was King Nimi. Now we hear about King Nimi, Bhagavatam, 7th canto. King Nimi is visited by the Navayogendras. So King Nimi is a king, an ancestor of Janak in the rule over Mithila. And Here's a very old painting of Janaka, spelled a little differently than we spell. And here's what Janaka says. A note ahead of time. What Janaka says about the bow of Shiva and what Parshuram says about the bow of Shiva differ. The very same kanda, by the very same version of Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana. And don't ask me to explain why is there this difference, because I don't know. But I'll point out the difference. Here's quoting from Balakanda, Janaka's description of the bow. This bow was used by Lord Shiva in a bygone age to disrupt the sacrifice of his son-in-law, Daksha. Now, the sacrifice of the son-in-law, Daksha, is different than what the Bhagavatam says. For those of you that like to listen carefully, you'll note Daksha and Shiva were brothers. They were sons of Brahma. This, call it Daksha part 1. And Daksha had a daughter. One of the daughters of Daksha was Sati. And Sati was given in marriage by Brahma to Shiva. Daksha had an attitude towards Lord Shiva. So he insulted Lord Shiva, and there was he arranged for a sacrifice, a yajna, that Shiva wasn't invited. So it's not, Bhagavatam's version is different. Daksha is not the son-in-law, he's the father-in-law. They're brothers. Anyway, so it's a different day of Brahma. That's one very simple explanation. Being denied his sacrificial share, Lord Shiva angrily picked up the bow and threatened to annihilate the demigods. Coming to their senses, the demigods were able to pacify Shiva. In turn, he handed over the bow to them. The demigods later entrusted the bow to Devarata, the eldest son of Maharaj Nimi, my forefather. That's different than what we're going to hear from Parshuram shortly. So here's a little summary. Lord Shiva gave, after he threatened to annihilate the demigods, he gave the bow to the demigods. The demigods gave the bow to Devarata, an ancestor of King of Mithila. And up to that time, the bow was worshipped with sandalwood paste, flowers, etc. The bow of Shiva was. Later in the same Balakanda of Valmiki Ramayana, there's an encounter with Parshuram. And Parshuram has the bow of Vishnu. But Parshuram, speaks of Lord Shiva having been given this bow by Vishwakarma for a different purpose than what we heard Janak say. Lord Shiva, was given the bow by Vishwakarma to annihilate Tripurasura. So here's a little history of Triparasaru. Lord Shiva once empowered Mayadanava to construct for the demons of Tripura a well of heavenly nectar that could revive the dead, thereby making the city and its residents difficult to destroy. Tripura is a place where demons resided. Mayadanava, we already heard about Mayadanava. He's the one whose daughter, Mandodari, was given in marriage. Ravana. Going to hear something further about Mayadanava had sons, in addition to his daughter, coming up. Mayadanava, so he's Danava means he's one of the sons of Kashyapa and Diti, just as the Adityas are the sons of Diti. Danavas are sons of Diti, Kashyapa. And in general, there's exception, but in general, the Danavas are demons. So Maya was one of the sons, Kashyapa and Diti. Mayadanava had mystic powers, and he was asked by the demons to do some service. He did the service, made this well of heavenly nectar. So now they have this benediction or power, they misuse it. The misuse was from Tripura, a terrible war was waged against the demigods. To check the demons, Vishwakarma gave a special bow to Lord Shiva to kill Triparasura, their leader. That's so. Now that's little background, historical background of what Triparasura is, because Parshuram refers to it. Here's Parshuram's words. After the marriage, heading back for Ayodhya, and there's this powerful personality standing in the path, stops everybody, including Dasarath, and speaks directly to Ram. He wants, I heard you broke Lord Shiva's bow. Congratulations. There's Vishnu's bow. He's giving this history. Both Lord Shiva's bow and the bow of Lord Vishnu were constructed by Vishwakarma. Lord Shiva was given one of the bows to kill Triparasura by Vishwakarma. One day, after Lord Shiva killed the demon, the demigods went to Lord Brahma and curiously inquired, who is more powerful, Lord Shiva or Vishnu? To resolve their doubts, Lord Brahma arranged to create some conflict between the two. As a result, a fierce battle ensued. During the fight, Lord Vishnu cut off Lord Shiva's bowstring and then immediately released a tumultuous roar. He stunned Lord Shiva's senses. At the behest of the demigods, the fighting was then stopped, and everyone who witnessed the duel concluded that Lord Vishnu is superior to Lord Shiva in all respects. Lord Shiva felt bitter because of his defeat, insulted by the verdict of the demigods. Thus, in a mood of gloom and disgust, he gave away his bow to Devarata. The other version says he gave the bow to the demigods, who gave it to Devarata, who was a king in the line of Ikshvaku. Lord Vishnu also gave away his bow to the great sage Richika, who later gave it to his son Jamadagni, who never used that bow, for it was his vow not to retaliate against any wrong done to him. And Parshuram is the son of Jamadagni, not the bow. Then he wants to have Ram do something with the bow. That's an important episode. Ram draws the empowerment invested in Parshuram from Parshuram. Parshuram becomes a normal Brahmin again and goes off to the Himalayas. Sorry. But all of this is the history of the bow, because it's the introduction to Mithila. There's this marriage of Sita and Ram, and it has everything to do with the bow of Shiva. So what's the bow of Shiva? I hope there aren't questions, as I'm going to say I don't know, about why these two name Valmiki Ramayana. But there's the history of the bow according to Janak, and the history of the bow according to Parashuram. And so there's been this long discussion about Vishwamitra's history, then a little discussion about the bow, because they've come to, Vishwamitra has brought him to test the bow, break the bow. And then Janak describes the birth of Sita. So we all know that story, and it's illustrated nicely, this painting. At the bottom, there's demigods showering flowers on Janak. And Janak was plowing the field, as is the tradition for a Kshatriya, before a yagya, that where the yagya stala is going to be set up. The person, in this case a king, actually plows the field to prepare the field for the yagya. And lo and behold, as he's plowing the field, from the furrow of the plow, Sita appears. And there's many different versions of how this works. Here's a recent photograph of the place where Sita took birth. Very simple today. And the bow was then brought into the assembly. So on the upper right, that's Janak finding the girl, Sita. And in the bottom left, that's he's preparing for the yagya itself. And there's two Janaks in the lower right. He's coming and going from the his palace. And the far left, that's he's telling the story of Viswamitra and Rama and Lakshman. Here's another painting. There's the plow. There's the plow. There's Janaka finding Sita. He's holding Sita in his arms. Got that golden robe on. The demigod showering flowers. There's another drawing of Janaka finding Sita. Look closely, you see below the bullocks, there's a lotus flower. On top of the lotus flower is Sita. It's different ways of illustrating the pastime. Sita coming out of the earth, and Sita returns to the earth. So that's the story of the bow and the story of Sita's birth. And Janak, there's some very nice descriptions of why Janak decided that whoever is going to marry my daughter should be able to string the bow of Shiva. And there's different descriptions of that. One of them is Sita, as a young girl, was being trained by her father to be a qualified wife, queen. So he gave her some household duties, just menial, humble duties. And one of the duties was to clean. So one of the areas that she had to clean was the area where the bow was kept. So Sita would, with one hand, pick up the bow, and the other hand clean the area where the bow was resting, and then place the bow back. But when kings came to lift the bow, they couldn't lift the bow. But my daughter can't be stronger than the king, able to do what she. And there's other examples of so apparently other versions of Ramayana, where she was with some girls in a garden, and they were playing with a ball, and the ball got stuck in a tree. They couldn't reach the tree, so Sita said, "I've got a solution." She went over to where the bow was in the box where it was kept. She lifted the bow and got the ball out of the tree. Bow back, like it was a toy. So Sita had power. There's some other examples, but he wanted that his daughter be married to a qualified person. Tradition in their family, in the royal family, the sacred bow. When it was time for the bow to be brought before Ram, the major description is it took some 300 men in a cart that had wheels just to pull the bow to the place where Ram was. Now that looks like a much smaller cart, but okay. And Ram looks at the bow. He looks at Viswamitra. Viswamitra nods, like, go ahead. There's not words exchanged, but it's understood. And he's testing the bow, and then he lifts the bow, and not only strings the bow, but as he's stringing the bow, he breaks the bow. Here's one such painting. There's Lakshman and Vishwamitra on the left. There's Sita with a garland outstretched on the right. And there's ministers and other people watching from behind. Here's another painting. The bow looks pretty skinny, but he lifts it. There's Vishwamitra standing in front of him. And look how little Sita looks like. And next to the king is his queen. And he breaks the bow. This is the ISKCON painting that's been embellished. Embellishment is that because the ISKCON painting doesn't have all that lights going away from the making of the bow. But when he lifts the bow, it's this humongous thing. And he not only lifts it, but he's stringing it. And the breaking of the bow makes such a loud sound that people get knocked over. And there's Sita ready with her garland to accept Ram as her husband. With a little research, it turns out Sita was 9. Ram was 12. So, Vedic culture. And many such paintings, garland. And then there was some internal discussion. How about Sita has a sister? And her sister, she could be married to Lakshman. And Janak really liked the idea. And then there was some further discussion. Viswamitra said, you have a brother, Kushadwaj, your brother. And doesn't your brother have 2 daughters? Wouldn't it be nice if the 2 daughters could be married to the other 2 brothers of Ram and Lakshman? And Janak liked the idea. His brother was contacted. His brother liked the idea. And Ram was adamant. I can't accept anything arrangement without my father's approval. The messengers were sent, long description, and a speedy path. They went through the, not the main road. They went through the back road and brought the message to Dasarath, who hadn't heard about his son. He's worried like a father. He's worried about how's my son going to meet these terrible demons out there, and how's he doing? So now he's faring well, but there's an arrangement for marriage because he was in his mind contemplating my son should at some point married. Duty of father to do like that. So when he heard the idea, he was really, really happy, and they hastened to get to Mithila. And when they get to Mithila, there's all these nice exchanges in Mithila. Because they're not only kings, ruling kings, but they know each other. So they have these nice exchanges back and forth and proper accommodations. Whole big, weddings are a big deal. What to speak of royal weddings, what to speak of a quadruple wedding. Really big deal. A lot of people come, and there's the combined marriage. And circumambulating the yajna arena. And there's the priest. Looks like Viswamitra did the yajna. There's King Janak seated there on his throne. And other people. Here's a little chart that says who married whom. Of course, we know Sita married Ram. And Urmila, the sister of Sita, married Lakshman. And then the 2 sisters of Kushadwaj. The 2 daughters, Kushadwaj, their names are. So blessings to the newly married couple. And, it's a big celebration. We're almost finished with the life of Viswamitra because his function was bringing Ram and Sita together. The photograph of the wedding place, mandap, vivaha mandap, and first going in to see it, knows what it looked like at the time that they married, but current structure there. And thus ends the story of Vishwamitra, because we don't hear about him. He asks for permission after the wedding is completed, and everyone's getting ready to go back to Ayodhya. He wants to go to the Himalayas and conclude his tapasya. And so there's this nice understanding about Vishwamitra's journey. Those that want essence. Journey of a person, it's different, but there's some similarity with Dhruva. Dhruva was, Sakam Bhakta. He had, because of his mother's association and his grandfather's association, he had bhakti. But he had, Sakam Bhakti, big time. And he got to the other side, Nishkam and Shuddha Bhakti. Vishwamitra followed a different path. It's according to the time. It's a different time path. It was a path, a different person. But he moved from the position of a king, an ambitious, powerful, proud, willing to offend Brahmanas king, to a brahmarshi, and doing service for others. Service-mindedness is part of his nature. Serve this one, that one, the other one, and at his own detriment. He served them because he liked to serve. And then he becomes a Vaishnav, and then he becomes a Shuddha Vaishnav, and he achieves spiritual perfection. Compliments of association with Ramachandra. The journey from Ayodhya going to Mithila was an exhibition of his maturing stages of devotion. So by association with Ram, he became purified. His name, Vishva means universe or the world, and Mitra means friend. That's the meaning of his name. Friend of the world, or friend of the universe. The last slide is this one. This is from Adi Leela Chaitanya Charitamrita. Vanamali Gataka, a resident of Navadvip and a Brahmin by caste, arranged the marriage of Lord Chaitanya and Lakshmi Devi. He was formerly Vishwamitra, who negotiated the marriage of Lord Ramachandra. And later he was the Brahmana who negotiated the marriage of Lord Krishna with Rukmini. The same Brahmana acted as the marriage maker of the Lord in Chaitanya Leela. So if you want to take part in all three personalities' pastimes, just, hang out with Vishwamitra and get to associate with these different forms of the Lord. Now, that ends the story of Vishwamitra. And what I was thinking to do is to go next to Vali and Sugriva. Let's go next to Vali and Sugriva. And then we'll take some questions. We'll go for about a half an hour. Let's see how far we get. There's the introductory slide. Vali was one of the Vanaras who were produced by demigods. And many of the other Vanaras that he was the king of were also produced by demigods. And there's lots of those names that naming people gets people confused. Some people. But he's the son of Indra. He became the king of the monkeys, and he's Sugriva's elder brother. And here's an old painting, Vali, same unique author, that artist that painted that painting we saw of Janaka. His younger brother was Sugriva, and he was the son of Surya, the sun god. And just a little bit about his strength. He was really, really strong. We already heard he was stronger than Ravana. So this information comes from Sugriva's describing when Ram wanted to know what's the strength of Vali. Sugriva describes every morning he did his morning rituals, but he didn't just go to a nearby river. He went in the four directions. He went to the southern part of India. He went to the eastern shore of India. He went to the western shore of India. He went way in the Himalayas, the northern part of India, and he did his morning rituals, then came back and had breakfast. So he's able to travel distances very swiftly. As fun, he would break off mountain peaks and toss them in the air and use them, playfully. Sometimes he would uproot strong and stout sal trees. Sal trees is, from our Western perspective, is something like an oak tree. It's like very thick and hardwood. That's the kind of tree. And he played with them, uprooted them, and hit them against things, and very powerful. And then we hear about, need something for my room. You get something? It's on somewhere on the bookshelf. It has these little blue, that long, and it says Vali and Sugriva, printed paper. Vali and Sugriva. So Dundubi, Sugriva tells the story of Dundubi, who was Mayadanava's younger son. So ready for this? Mayadanava, to repeat something we've already spoken today, Mayadanava had a daughter. Mayadanava's daughter was Mandodari. Mandodari became the wife of Ravana. But Mayadanava had two sons. One of them was Dundubi. And Dundubi had a giant body that he could have shape-changing powers. So he came to Vali's place and wanted to challenge Vali to combat. Vali came roaring out, picked him up, smashed him to the ground many, many times, bashed him, smashed him, and then finally twirled him around and threw him a distance of 8 miles. And it's as he was traveling, or flying through the air, some blood from his body dripped on the hermitage of Sage Matanga. Sage Matanga is near. Sage Matanga is the place where Shabari was stayed, and near where Kishkinda is. So as the blood dripped, he understood where the blood is coming from. He Sage Matanga, cursed Vali. If you ever come within some range of the Rishimukh mountain, which is where my hermitage is nearby, you'll immediately die. But gigantic, we'll see some images shortly. This gigantic beast bull-shaped entity, was picked up by him and tossed in the. We heard already about Vali being capturing Ravana. This is the painting we saw. This was one of the images in the story of Ravana, that he was defeated by Kartavirya Arjuna and defeated by Bali and defeated by Bali, Bali Maharaj also. So the story behind this painting is shown here. During this period of time when Ravana was on conquest, he heard about the strength of Vali, so he went to visit Vali to engage him in combat. So we see in the painting on the upper right, there's Ravana. By this time he has Pushpaka. There he is riding his Pushpaka. And he's now coming before the Vanaras. These are some of his buddies. And this is the Vanaras, and specifically amongst the Vanaras, there's Tara and Sugriva. And Ravana is told that Vali went to the Southern Ocean, as he does this every morning. He does his Sandhya rituals. So you can just wait here and he'll come back. Or if you want, you can hurry up and go ahead and find him at the sea. And so this is the kingdom of Kishkinda, by the way, on the left side. And so he can't wait. He wants to fight Vali. He rides his Pushpaka Vimana, comes in for a landing. There he sees at a distance Vali. He sneaks up behind him. Vali sees him sneaking up behind. And he doesn't want to stop his rituals. So he just tucks him under his armpit, finishes ritual. Doesn't say a word to him. Goes to the eastern sea, goes to the western sea, all the way up to him. Comes back to Kishkinda, sets him down and said, "What was it?" And Ravana, powerful guy. So let's make friends. And this is a painting. On the left side are the Vanaras, led by Vali. Vali's wearing this special chain around his neck. Got that. And on the right side is Ravana's associate, Rakshas. They're making a friend. They're doing it in a different way than Sugriva and Ram did, just chewing something, betel nut or pen. Now there is a second version of who is Dundubi, but Dundubi here short. So here's a painting of Sugriva, who was the younger brother, and he served his brother very with all respect. And one day, Mayavi, who's the older brother of Dundubi and the older son of Mayadanava, he came to Kishkinda, challenged Bali. And however, there's Mayavi. Yeah, the second version of Mayavi is he's not brother of Dundubi, but he's a demon that had a dispute with Bali over a woman. So he came to Kishkinda to have it out with Bali over his dispute over a woman. That's another version. In either version, the rest of the narration is the same. He roared, come out for combat. Both Vali and Sugriva came out of the palace. When Vali saw how strong and how big and how powerful, he became afraid. That's on the left side. He started running. On the right side, he entered into a cave. Now there's Vali and Sugriva standing at the entrance of the cave. Vali said, I'm going to go in the cave. You wait here and guard the mouth of the cave. And so Sugriva, being the younger brother, older brother, asked, and it took a long time. 1 year passed. He was just sitting there vigilant, guarding the mouth of the cave. And then he starts hearing this loud roaring sound inside. And he's understanding they found each other, they're having a big battle. And after some time, he hears distinctly Vali's voice. And after that, there's a stream of foamy blood flowing from the tunnel. And he thinks that may be my brother that got killed. And so he puts a giant boulder at the mouth of the cave. This giant boulder is like the size of a mountain itself. And afraid, or with the assumption that his brother had died, he went back to give the bad news to the citizens in Kishkinda. Well, the citizens in Kishkinda needed a king. Being the younger brother, he was anointed as the king. He didn't want it. We have to have a king. We have to have a king. He finally accepted. Some time passed. Vali came back. And Sugriva was really, wonderful. Let's resume things. You're the king, and I'll be your menial servant, and we'll be happy. But Vali wasn't ready for that. Vali blamed him, chastised him severely. He threatened his ministers with death, and he banished Sugriva from the kingdom and usurped his wife. And he didn't stop there. Vali followed Sugriva everywhere, all over the whole planet, ready to smash him. So there was enmity between brothers. That happens. So when Sugriva meets Ram, he narrates all this history because Ram wants to help Sugriva regain his wife and kingdom. And Sugriva is then to help Ram regain his wife and kingdom. So it's decided to help Sugriva first. So Sugriva is narrating the strength and power and the history of Vali. And he describes this situation with the buffalo demon, or Dundubi. You see on the lower left, that's the battle with Dundubi. And then you see on the right side, there's the sage Matanga, as the Dundubi is being thrown 8 miles in the air. And the blood from the buffalo, or Dundubi, drips on his area of his ashram. So sage Matanga cursed Vali that if he stepped within the area of Rishimukh mountain, Vali would instantly die. So Vali kept away. And after some time, that's where Sugriva finally ended to find protection. He stayed on this Rishimukh mountain. And there's an artist drawing on the left, and there's a photograph on the right, exactly where the mountain is. And so you ask, I guess, one indication of Rishimukh mountain. I mean, this other one is some indication of Rishimukh mountain, at least what the terrain looks like in that. Very tall. The photograph is taken from the top of that hill, and apparently this is the hill. In any case, that's where Sugriva stayed. And when Ram is to meet Sugriva, Hanuman takes him there, and they make some friendship. And then all this discussion about who is Vali and how strong is he. And there's some test to see can Ram meet the qualification to defeat him. We'll see that shortly, but he with his toe, he flicks the carcass of Dundubi in the air. It goes some further distance. Now, it's said that he threw the carcass of Dundubi 8 miles. I don't know the distance between where Kishkinda is and the Rishimukh mountain is. Maybe it's something like 8 miles. But anyway, he flicked with his toe. Bones. Dundubi went flying in the air, and Sugriva said, well, that was pretty good, but when my brother threw Dundubi, he had flesh, not just bones. So what other... my brother had a power to fire an arrow through a sal tree. Can you do that? And so Ram smiled and fired an arrow through 7 sal trees. That arrow went into the earth, down to the nether regions, came back and landed in a river. And Sugriva said, I think you can beat brother. And then Ram made the suggestion, which is that Sugriva should challenge Vali to combat, and then while you're combating, I'll shoot him with an arrow. That was the plan. And this painting shows there's Ram on the far right, hiding behind a tree. There's Sugriva roaring to have Vali come out and have combat with him. Here's some birds falling out of the tree because the roar is so loud. Falling out of the sky because the roar is so loud. And down here is Tara, the wife of Vali, persuading him on the second visit to not do combat with Sugriva, and some other ministers and his son Angada and so forth. And this is the palace of Vali. That's Kishkinda Palace. So Vali comes out after Sugriva is roaring to challenge him to come out. Here we see Ram hiding behind a tree, Lakshman hiding behind a tree, Hanuman hiding behind another tree. And he's roaring. And I guess that's Kishkinda. So they have a big battle. And this painting shows on the one side, here's Vali because he's got this golden chain. And on the other side is Sugriva because he has this vine or garland that was given to him. And the history, this is a very interesting trick. Indra gave this golden pendant or chest pendant to Vali that had a special power. The power was, if you're ever in combat and you're wearing this gold necklace, the half of the strength of the opponent will come to you. Really good trick. Because however strong the other person is, there's Vali's strength plus half of the other person's strength, leaving them with only half strength. So he's going to win. Every time he's going to win. And so you'll always take their strength, and it'll preserve the wearer's life, effulgence, and beauty. Indra is very kind to his Vanara's son, Vali, and no one could defeat him. In the background on the right, you see Ram with his arrow ready to fire, but he doesn't fire his arrow. And later, Ram explained that he couldn't distinguish between the two brothers. And I gave to Snehavali PDF, which you should have by now, that is a multiple paged explanation answering the question, wait a minute, Ram's omniscient. How come Ram couldn't distinguish between the two? Did he lie? Ram doesn't lie. So how do you answer that? So you have a PDF, so rather than going through the whole thing, there's different answers. But he didn't fire the arrow. And when he didn't fire the arrow, Sugriva eventually, half of his strength went to Vali because of that pendant, and he got whipped. Again, little different painting. Here's Ram behind a tree. Here in the middle, this one has Hanuman behind a tree, and there's Lakshman. Looks like this is the same Kishkinda over here. So as Sugriva's getting whooped, he's nearly lost his life. He gets up and runs for his life. And where does he run? He runs to Rishimukh Mountain. Because Rishimukh Mountain is the place where Vali won't go. When he got to Rishimukh Mountain, Vali wouldn't go. And Sugriva says, if you had no intention of firing your arrows, why'd you send me anyways? I never could have engaged in combat with my brother because you're strong. I ran for years and years and years from him. And this is where Ram says, I couldn't tell the difference between the two of you, but I have a plan. What's the plan? Lakshman, please get a vine, make it into a garland, and give the garland, there's the garland around Sugriva's neck. Give the garland to Sugriva, and then I'll be able to tell the difference between the two. Interesting. And every time when I first heard this and every time I narrate it, here are these two powerful warriors going at it. Isn't that vine just going to come off? So how does that work? But the teaching, this is important. This is a very important message, which I think next will cover Lakshman. Because Lakshman, in relation to Ram, is like Nityananda to Lord Chaitanya, or Balaram to Krishna. He's in that position. He's, as Balaram, this from Adi Leela, we'll hear it again to get to Lakshman, but he's the original master. Balaram is the original Lakshman is Lord Nityananda is the original master. And one cannot please Ram by disregarding spiritual master. So what happened when they first met and they made their friendship, Sugriva made a sitting place for Ram. Sitting place arrangement was had some leaves placed on the ground, tree. Then he sat on some placed on the ground from a tree. But he didn't pay attention to Lakshman. And Hanuman noted it. Hanuman made a sitting for Lakshman. But Sugriva didn't. That was in a don't offend Lakshman. Okay. Even unintentional. So Ram didn't bring it to his attention then, and even now he didn't bring it to his attention. Messed up Lakshman. What he did was he had Lakshman garland him, and to receive the garland, Sugriva had to bow before Sugriva. And that relieved him of the offense. And so off he goes, convinced now that Ram has the power and the capacity to defeat Vali. So he convinces Sugriva, go back to Kishkinda, scream out again, and, bring him out for combat. So there he is screaming out again. And there's a highlight on the left side. Tara says to Vali, don't go, don't go, don't go. Why not? Because what is the reason behind Sugriva, who just got whooped within the edge of death, and is so quickly he's coming back again? It means there's some strength beyond his own strength. And I heard from some spies, Angada, our son, told me, he saw some spies told him that Sugriva has made a friendship with Rama and Lakshman. And Rama and Lakshman are very, very, very powerful. And so that's what's encouraging Sugriva to come again. So please don't go. Rather, just make friendship with Sugriva, and that'll make things very nice. So she's providing good wifely advice, and unfortunately, Vali is a little impetuous and can't hear the good wifely advice from Tara. Although, when he does, he's giving the right advice. He doesn't follow her advice. Gosh, it's 8 minutes before 9 o'clock. So I think I'll end here. We have this next scene where Ram fires his arrow. Again, Sugriva's getting whipped. But Vali is standing to the side. That's the opportunity for Ram to fire his arrow. So we're going to hear a whole other section of Ram slaying Vali, what Vali has to say, what Ram has to say to Vali. And, the conclusion of the Vali part, then comes the Sugriva part. Because this is binding the two brothers together. The son of Indra, Vali, and the son of the sun god, Sugriva. Two brothers. Having enmity with one over a misunderstanding. So I got lost with time. It's now, we have 7 minutes left or 9 o'clock. Is there anything online? Yes, go ahead. Microphone.
Yeah. So she is saying, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, Ahalya, even after detecting he is not her husband but Indra, she got attracted and united with him.
Yes.
And got the curse from her husband to become a stone for several years.
Yes.
After she was relieved from her curse by Lord Ramachandra, Gautama accepted her back into his life.
Yes.
My question is, did Gautama thought that she got her chastity back by the touch of Lord Ramchandra? That was the reason to again welcome her into his life? And if Lord touch was not there, even after becoming stone for so many years, would not have got back her chastity?
The answer is the combination of two things. Extended sense control, like, sages would do for voluntary sense control. She was in an involuntary sense control. She didn't have any choice. She's a stone. Sense control. And then mercy. So the combination of the two.
Second is from Satish Bhatnagar Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj, is there a reason why Lord Rama did not try to solve Sugriva's problem diplomatically first, giving an opportunity for Vali to correct his mistake?
Well, several things. There's a Leela here, and part of the purpose of Leela is to give instruction. In a prior discussion on this topic, could Lord Ram have done this differently? Absolutely. How many different ways? Unlimited numbers of different ways he could have resolved this. If there's unlimited different ways, why did he do it this way? Couldn't he have done it? The question is, couldn't he have done it a different way? And there's n number of other ways he could have done this. Why did he do it this way? It was to deliver Vali and to teach some lessons. We'll hear that when it comes to the discussion. But one of those lessons is what Vali did, according to Dharma, was very serious. Aside from, harming and mistrusting his younger brother, cohabiting with his younger brother's wife. And that's, adharmic, big time. And so an arrangement was made for this to happen the way that it happened, and to teach a principle of Dharma to us, to the world, and to us by arranging it this way. Then the rest of the Leela to have other instructions unfold. So, let's say this, referring back to that Padma Purana reference, 1 billion Ramayanas, or descriptions of the pastimes of Ram, are there. And there are differences. So maybe the difference could be in one of those other appearances of Lord Ram. But we're hearing the Valmiki Ramayana primarily, and this is the way he decided to do it. Maybe in other appearances he did it in so many other different ways. But the purpose primarily is a Leela purpose, an instruction purpose. By the Lord's activities, he's instructing us.
Another one is from Amara Mataji. Hare Krishna Maharaj, just like Yogamaya potency makes Krishna forgets sometimes about his own position for the sake of Krishna's pleasure and for the sake of Leela. Similarly, does Lord Rama also forget sometimes that he is the Supreme Lord?
Oh, yes. Beautiful. There's this nice analysis or assessment of Ram's Leela. We mentioned it the other day, but in some cases, he goes over the top in describing his divinity, and in other sides, he goes way over in the other direction and describes his mortality, or his I am nothing but the son of Dasarath, because some persons eulogize him, and he, doesn't allow it. I am simply the son of Dasarath, obedient to his order.
She is continuing. While he is crying for Mother Sita or not being able to distinguish between Vali and Sugriva, we see such examples. I am also trying to understand what pleasure he is getting in these kind of bewilderments, or how this is supporting the Leela.
Well, the PDF that you probably have received, did she receive it?
Yes, I posted it on the Signal group.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's there. Yeah.
So you look at the PDF, and your point is in the PDF. Now, what it doesn't say what kind of pleasure he's deriving. He's deriving transcendental pleasure. He, like Krishna, sometimes enjoys being apparently not omniscient. He enjoys, as you mentioned in your question, sometimes by Yogamaya, he enjoys being, having that emotion and having that feeling that I'm confused, I'm uncertain, and he enjoys it. We should understand, even in those circumstances, he doesn't become omniscient or doesn't become, restored. He is always omniscient. Just a pastime. That's how we should understand those circumstances. So what kind of pleasure is he deriving? Is it, there's the unlimited varieties of ways that people can experience pleasure. Everything comes from him, including these experiences. He's enjoying them. He enjoys being like this. He doesn't seem to know. He becomes a little miffed or uncertain or confused about what to do, etc.
These were the questions online. I have 3 clarification points. May I
Sure,
ask?
sure.
Yeah. Okay. So regarding Ahilya, I was thinking it was for certain ages she turned into a stone, but it looked like from today's narration that it was just within one lifetime.
There are different versions of Ramayana,
Yeah.
and I'm unfamiliar with the many ages version. A long time, but this one lifetime. That's my understanding.
Yeah. And second, it also seems like Lord favors Indra a lot.
Yes.
Whatever he does.
Not whatever he does. Not whatever he does. I mean, he gets admonished and has to undergo us. He has to go through troubles. Now, this question has come up. No surprise. Not only in Ramayana, but in other places it comes up. It comes up in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam with the Chinese devotees. To go to heaven takes lots of piety. What to speak of becoming a king of heaven takes lots more piety. And the piety isn't just like material piety; it's devotion. But at the same time, he is not pure. So it's the same formula. The fruits of piety plus a heart that's impure equals pride. So it's a risk to take a high position if your heart's not pure, because pride is going to come. And when pride comes in the heart of someone that's very dear to the Lord, does foolish things, the Lord corrects him because he's very dear to the Lord. Although he does, because there's pride, because he gets so. One of the showstoppers was, supposing, let's not say that Vishnu made a mistake by having Manu give the post to this Indra, that Indra. Supposing it was another person, it's the same risk of the territory. That is, opulence without a heart that's pure. Pride. And with pride comes in other things, including this other fault of lust. It's in the very beginning of the 6th canto, very beginning of the 1st chapter. No, it's in the Dhruva story. Anyway, I can't remember exactly where it's from. The causes of destruction start with pride, and then comes other destructive forces. Lust is one that comes. So it goes with the territory.
He didn't get that severe punishment which Ahilya went through. It was like...
Well, you should be Vishnu instead of Vishnu, because Vishnu does things the way Vishnu does things. And what was appropriate for her was what was appropriate for her. From our side, we hold our pen scale out. It just looks unfair. It's unfair. He gets, a nice, lesser punishment. She gets a greater punishment. Not fair. From our side, but we're not understanding what the person needs and what best correction will come and so forth. We don't have that capacity. Our measuring stick doesn't do the trick.
Another thing is, I didn't get that difference in stories which you mentioned in the beginning regarding Daksha and Lord Shiva. I have to hear that again.
Okay.
But
I'll send you the PowerPoint. I'll send you the, because the text, well, study it and you'll catch it.
yeah, but I didn't hear anything. As far as I remember, in Canto 6, Lord Shiva just left that when the sacrifice was
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
So there was no bow involved in that.
No, but then there was a second yagya that Lord Shiva wasn't invited.
2 times that happened?
Yes. There was the counter cursing that came from the first yagya,
Yeah.
and then there's a second yagya, and he doesn't invite Shiva. And his wife sees all the devas going to the second yagya, and these are all my family members and friends and so forth and so on. And can I go? And he says, I don't advise it because but if you want to go, you'll have a bad experience. So she goes, and she's insulted.
Yeah.
And then she does what she does. And then there's a big uproar. Lord Shiva comes to know that his wife has been killed, and he sends Virabhadra, and it's a big scene. Because she was offended.
Yeah.
She gave up her body, saying, he didn't say, you offended me. You offended my husband. You offended a perfect soul. And so it's 2 different times.
So the bow part was in the first one then? Bow, the bow. Bow with the Lord Shiva. The Lord Shiva had that bow, which we were talked in the beginning. That was in the first sacrifice, because the second
according to what Janaka's narration does not match the Bhagavatam narration.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
There was a yagya. Shiva was not to be given his whatever you call that, the fruits, the benedictions that come from the yagya. He became angry, got his bow. He threatened the demigod, but the demigods weren't doing the yagya. They were the recipients of the yagya.
Mm.
But, they calmed him down and gave the bow to the... So that's Janaka's not matching Bhagavatam's narrative. The only way to sort through all these different explanations is different days of Brahma. The flow in the different days of Brahma, the discrepancies used in this Padma Purana verse, the discrepancies are due to different days of Brahma. There are discrepancies. This doesn't match that, doesn't match that. Not. I'd have a better explanation, but that's the Padma Purana explanation. It's not always like that. Here's a for example. Since our discussion, I've done some further research on Ramcharitamanas. And Ramcharitamanas is not a different, it wasn't written in a different day of Brahma, but it could be about Ram's appearance in a different day of Brahma. So there it specifically says that the celestial nectar is in his navel. Had someone research it. I'm going to do a rerun of this Central New Jersey over the Thanksgiving holiday. Now, I already informed one devotee, you get confused by all these names, don't attend because it's going to be a rerun. So, in Ramcharitamanas, Vibhishan says to Ram, the celestial nectar is in his navel. In Valmiki Ramayana, he says the celestial nectar is in his heart. So he shoots him in the navel in Ramcharitamanas. So, one could take the position, look, I'm with Valmiki. And, I'm not going to pay any attention to this other fellow. He's just making stuff up. Then there's another way to take it, that he has his profound realization from being very, very devoted, not an ordinary author, speculator type person, scholarly type person, but deeply devoted. And there's examples in his life of how deep was his devotion. He was deeply devoted. I don't know the history of his life. I know something about the history of his life. And one of those histories is he went to Jagannath Puri. And when he went to Jagannath Puri, he saw Lord Ramachandra. Like Lord Chaitanya saw Krishna holding a flute. He is deeply devoted to Lord Ramachandra. Now maybe these are folk tales and maybe all this stuff didn't happen. But deeply devoted. And there are persons, it may be the version of Ramayana that you grew up with, because it's very popular. Very, very popular in North India. Certainly in Bihar. That's where Radha Govinda comes from, is Bihar. And he loves Ramcharitmanas. Anyway, and there's many persons that love Ramcharitmanas. So, differences. It's 11 minutes after 9. We're going to end. Thank you very much, Prabhupada.
Ki Jai. Thank you.